And welcome back. Sorry. And welcome back. Northstar here with another Hearthstone 4. Got the Damun. Let's play US Socialist Run. Now, um, should explain a tiny bit about my grand strategic approach here. Whereas some of you may see my US Mexico game and notice that there my strategy is to emphasize the strength of my navy at all costs. Um, that's partly because I knew with my friend playing Mexico, I'd have a secure southern flank, and with UK going communist and Canada going communist, especially secure northern border, so the only real threats can come overseas. Also, it's going to take a less aggressive approach intervening in Europe because no matter what happened there, um, there's the issue of wanting my friend playing Mexico to have a chance to get really strong. Mexico has a lot of late game potential if it's going its communist path and marching south and taking Central and Southern America. It takes a long time for them to get there. When to get the chance to actually enjoy the benefits of that, going so far as even playing to having Puppet Florida. This game is single player. None of that's really happening, so I have to have a strong army and intervene earlier in Europe, or I'm going to have a brutal time doing it later, with the Nazis quite likely overrunning everything. Especially because the UK appears to be going non-aligned path, which means they will ally with the Nazis most likely, and I'll have to fight them both. Well, my navy will obviously be very important for that. Um, the only way I can hope to contest both the British and German navy for long, especially because I'm going to lose a lot of ships wearing down the British navy and won't have that big a navy, so it won't be that difficult to outbuild it if enough of the continent falls under the Axis control, would be if I get like a foothold here in Spain, assuming that the Republicans, communists win, or Portugal, and then march from there into France to liberate it from probably Nazi control, etc. There may be other strategies, but I need to march in and prevent them from getting control of so many dockyards that they can actually outbuild me, even though the AI doesn't build great ship designs. Um, I still don't have to intervene that early, but it's easier if I do it sooner. And it means Army needs to take priority over Navy. So there's another one went for quick improvisation and grand battle plan, very quick. Here I'm probably gonna go relief of command. Um, to get Army XP with the first before I even go for grand battle plan, most likely. Probably saving a light self-propelled artillery template and maybe a medium one too, which means I'll have to create at least a very cheap medium self-propelled design. Um, Probably not very good with the medium, not anything I'll actually build, but just so I can actually unlock the templates. Because right now I don't think I can actually. Yeah, I don't have access to any. I have to actually have self-propelled artillery designs to actually. Yeah, even though the medium might not be anything I necessarily build, I can spend minimal amount of experiences to have it. Because someday I might swap to it, but the light I'll probably make use of in combination with light tanks. Um, One thing I'll probably do with this communist path, and since I can't rely on the communist Mexican how to do it, unaided is probably some volunteers at some point went to ideology flip to help them push south, or maybe intervene in the wars and use light tanks to push these jungles. Medium tanks will get caught in the jungles. They're not very good at that. Shooting up South America, Army XP would be very useful to make sure I do well enough with that. That will delay when I need to intervene in Europe, though I'm going to have to do it sooner or later. I may simultaneously be seeing volunteers here and then eventually joining wars directly. I still want to do the limited intervention focus, which I'll have to do before I flip communist and have enough support I can take democratic socialism already when I do it, so I can still make the flip. Because that's the way I can get all 6 of my research slots. Otherwise, I'm limited to 5 when going communist if I don't do limited intervention. You can't do neutrality focus and still become communist unless you have someone boosting communism support in your country with spies, which is incredibly difficult. You probably need like the Soviets and the communist Italians and Spain or something. Basically, a multiplayer game is the only way that could ever happen, and with a level of collusion that probably never occur. So, U.S. can potentially, if they stay democratic a long time, do limited interventions and still go communist to get that 6th research slot, but they can't mix it with Neutrality Act. So, which gets you the research slot sooner in limited intervention, but you can get it through either one of those paths. Also, the war support you get from it eventually. Nice. Strong army, though, is going to be semi-focused, and because I'm going to be democratic quite a while, relief of command will have the chance to pay for itself. Quick improvisation would give me command power instead. That's more useful with Navy to recruit a bunch of admirals and try and get ones with good personality traits that you can train up to high levels. I have to focus more on my army, so. Alright, let's get going, shall we? Get a place for. Let's take a headache. I do not know how long I will do this before the other games, because this game is much more draining than most of the games I play, unfortunately. Apologize for that, but I did set the Soviet Union to go right opposition and Spain to go commune, Spanish commune. Factionalism is the first sign they're going with their alternate communist paths, I believe, if my memory serves. Of course, want to make sure either the Spanish Republic or the Commune wins. The Republic is actually slightly stronger if the Commune replaces the anarchists and has time to run their industrial focuses before losing. But the right opposition can actually ally with the Spanish Commune, so either way, that will lead to Spain. It's kind of silly that, like the Trotskyites, can't ally with the POUM, but whatever. Nobody likes Trotskyites, I guess. Them being a faction, and then I can, by a focus, join the Soviets faction. Will ensure I can, will ensure that I can attack up from here into liberating France. The Nazis over in all of Europe and are pushing east here. Short supply lines and trying to send divisions around this north route to the Soviet Union, help on the eastern front, because to resupply them to go this Arctic route. Easier just to push through Spain. Of course, it might be that Franco wins, or Fascists or Carlos in Spain. There's no guarantee that I can make sure the left wins. Mexico is going communist and will hopefully be sending like guns to the Spanish Civil War, but in volunteers maybe, but that's probably not going to be enough. The AI is not great about it running that often. It does seem to prioritize giving these guys equipment first. I was hoping it'd be different, but it seems to go in order down this list. Maybe I should put all those trained battalions in, but it isn't something. Kind of a mental reminder myself of nothing else. So still, a strong industry. Selling stuff early is a way to strengthen my industry, so. Put money into civilian factories, which eventually go into military factories. Definitely more of them. These aren't really National Guard divisions anymore. But you know, I'm probably gonna actually want pretty big. I'm gonna change these. I probably should have done this earlier. These are currently exercise. Large exercise. So that later they can be converted to National Guard. Divisions. Strong defense near DC. Strong force, because I may actually want to push these guys to attack him who crosses here, or attack here, cut him off, and then deal with it. These, I'm probably going to have one division here. A little stronger than the smaller division. Could spam engineers, but I want some ability to, well, I should say like engineer brigade, small ones that just have high defense for the number of men. Something like, give you an idea what I mean by engineer brigades. This, or this, the stats aren't correct without the equipment assigned. See, 112 defense, that's enough to avoid crits when dug in on defense. In decent terrain, a lot that usually, and even if there's some crits, it won't be too many, at least. So they delay for bigger divisions. So I might like leave one of those and have these potentially be able to pull this way. Just make sure if anything crosses, they're ever going from here to here, we can crush it. Or maybe cut them off in circle and then crush. Either way. Otherwise, it's defensive all along here. And I'll be mainly pushing in Texas and Tennessee early. Wouldn't be terrible to take Arkansas early either. I mean, historically in the U.S. Civil War, that's kind of how it was. There was some battles up in like Maryland, Virginia, but actually most of the early pushing. Oops, I think I meant to swap these in for. Most of the early pushing was, well, it was very overflow, so that was the right. Didn't need to. This is distracting me. Sorry. Most of the early pushing was out west, actually, in the historical first U.S. Civil War, 1860s, with forces pushing, the goal being to eventually reach New Orleans, and then what was Operation Anaconda, I think it was called, to then having cut off New Orleans and a naval blockade cut off the Confederacy from any naval trade, so they couldn't access various resources that were starting to be needed for things like cannons. And just, they were an agricultural economy that would rely on selling cash crops, and for their military, and using the proceeds to buy weapons from overseas. So a naval blockade ensured they couldn't get guns. Here, I definitely haven't and won't build any military factories in the South, except maybe if I want Tennessee, because I'll take Nashville very early. Liberate Nashville. So Oh, there are events to move some military factories down south, though. But they'll probably have a high civ proportion, which mean they will be most dangerous if they're buying weapons. So kind of off, because they buy with their own convoys. The routes can be blockaded. It's in my interest. But maybe I'll actually start naval blockade immediately, not wait. It'd be easier once I cut off everything that borders the Gulf of Mexico. So everything west of New Orleans, Houston, all that. New Orleans touches the Florida coast area, then it's just this sea zone and eastern seaboard that I need to control to take care of any enemy convoys. Of course, if I'm using subs, I'm actually going to want to be out in the Sargasso Sea in the Caribbean. Subs are less visible in deep oceans and on Ford's archipelagos. Whereas surface ships, shallow oceans. Capital ships don't fight well in the Caribbean. And screens, which should be a lot of my fleet, don't fight well in the deep oceans. So subs further out, but surface ships here. Florida coast. And eastern seaboard. So, try that again. Ooh. A division I can train. Deploy, pre-deploy. Down in New Mexico. This is a very under-equipped division. Take just about forever to reach regular, but I'll get there someday. Take even longer for any of these that deploy. Those will be probably turned into smaller divisions, though. These are the larger ones. 3 times more equipment on average, but be turned into divisions that are about 3 times the size, a little less. The ones that will actually do attacking. No. This German Nazi music shit. Luftwaffe March. I don't think so. At least 3 divisions here, probably. Some here. So I pause again. Whoops. This is a noble, inspiring song. Now, the first people promote to field marshal will probably be these 3. They'll either brilliant strategist, inflexible strategist, or in this case, Mark Clark will probably be the guy you give offensive doctrine, infantry leader, and uses whenever I attack with infantry. He's reckless, so not great defense. someday Courtney Hodges. Stillwell, Griswold, but some of these people will. Stillwell's got some potential. He's harsh later. Probably Stillwell will someday be swapped in, and the idea with him will be eventually promote Field Marshal government defensive doctrine, along with ambusher tactics. Field Marshal specializes in entrenchment and defending like ports. Really? Have to train him up a bunch to be usable that way. Division recovery rate doesn't matter much at ports because usually it's not getting cycled. It's one attack that you need to beat. So harsh reader is actually good for that. Pushing back in the sea. It's not. If you're counterattacking, it's with other divisions like tanks, you rush the area. If you got pushed off the coast. Tsunami of Innovation. That's the better of multiple different things can give Navy XP. And that gives 50. I like this song, Attention Swedish Tattoo. It's light-hearted songs like this are, I think, more emblematic of the more hopeful, positive, democratic, and alternate communist path ideologies. So, like Stalinist paths are more brutal and ruthless. Less about the ideals of socialism in terms of lifting people up. But like Spartacus lead path, what do has embraced democratic institutions, civil liberties, its focuses. That kind of communism is all about investing in people and helping them to thrive. And breaking the power of the investor class so that you don't have those people perverting society into only working for the very rich. It's a key element of socialism is breaking the power of the investor class. That's what bourgeois means. It means investor class. People often intentionally misunderstand what that term means. I hate, well, they've been doing it since the days of Engels and Lenin wrote about this, about how people don't defeat socialism in arguments. They construct an argument, straw man, and then defeat the straw man arguments because they don't care to learn what they're actually arguing against, or they know they can't beat what they're arguing against. So they tear down the straw man instead. Bourgeois doesn't mean has money. Bourgeois means has capital, has control of factories, mines, large farms usually, and small farmers who actually work the land themselves are not considered bourgeois. They're considered petite bourgeois. But socialism is focused on the bourgeois. It's focused on the investor class. This is, in our modern society, the billionaires. And on taking their assets and putting it under the control of the people through trade unions, workers' cooperatives, state-owned enterprises. Those three things. Worker-run companies. Whether that's through the state, which is the more Stalinist approach, through a lot of worker cooperatives, which tends to work more with market socialist ideas, where you still maintain a market, but all the entities that exist in the market. You may not have a capital market, but you have a market for goods and services that is not really planned. And instead, worker cooperatives compete within it. And the law requires business is to be run as worker cooperatives. Private ownership is not allowed. except maybe with small farms. And sometimes there's certain exemptions that be made. That's market socialism, which is one of the forms of socialism that conveniently people who talk about the efficiency markets never address, because if markets are so great, then why not do market socialism? You still have markets. Like I said, construct straw man, tear it down, assume all socialism is planned economies, state centrally planned command economies, ignore all the other forms of socialism, and then on top of that is misrepresent who it's really about opposing, the investor class. Pretend that it's really about markets, but it's really about investments. It's just, of course, the defining feature of capitalism is investments. Is stock owners, people who, do no work and collect profits. For that, you may still have a job, but owning stocks and bonds, you're getting money simply for having money, and ending that. Socialism is fundamentally no one should get money just for having money. They should get money for the work they do instead. Because a lot of people, the vast majority of the population, don't have much money. They have their labor to sell, and so if one of the primary things that earns people money is having money, money makes money idea, through investments, then the very rich would just keep getting richer, and everyone else would get increasingly crushed into the boot of those who have investments. So instead, put investments under control of workers' cooperatives, the state, or sometimes there's variants that have trade unions run stuff, which is kind of really just a variant of workers' cooperative. It's the same sort of idea. That's what socialism is, for any of you who don't know. And that's probably anyone watching this who's not a socialist, and most Americans, because Americans are kept intentionally ignorant of what socialism is. Alright. Suspended the persecution. To take this, I have to appoint Bowder. I'll do that right now, actually, because I might want to run anti-communist raids at some point for stability. I won't want to hurt the amount of communist support I have too much. May have to unassign him someday. To keep it below 50 or 60% communist support, 50 for the elections, or 60 for like demands for referendums, until be a focus here, which I'll add 25%, so from like 45, that'll get me up to 70, which is a fine level to have. It's not perfect, but anyways, whether I can afford to pay a commissary, it's not depends partly on how long of a peace I can expect, how well the Nazis are doing expanding. If they're over anything quickly, then Austria did bring back the Habsburgs, so they're not just going to roll over and allow Anschluss. The Nazis will probably have to fight them. It doesn't seem Czechoslovakia is going fascist or anything, so usually on games aren't set historical. Even if Czechs are taking a historical path, they won't just roll over and die. So Czechoslovakia will probably go or refuse to go up the Sudetenland. The Germans will have to fight through it. Unfortunately, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary seem to all be going their historical paths and will all join the Axis. Some people try and deny, or act like some kind of propaganda, the fact that Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania all join the Axis. No, that's a historical fact. Of course, Romania is a little more complicated. They resisted joining the Axis for a while, lost territory to Hungary and Nazi bullying, and at that point they were framed into joint Axis, and then the Fascists took power after they already joined Axis. It was for a time under King Carol, non-aligned nation Axis, but then eventually the actual Fascists did a coup and took over. Right. Doing this because I want advanced fitting works early on. Numbers, because I'm going to have to fight the British Navy. Can't afford to be quality for quantity when I'm going to have to deal with the freaking British. Need a lot of ships to deal with them. Alright. Separate fire mains. More funding for Newport News. I'll get them another size. Grab rapid fire guns. Advanced fitting works. Just be able to trade after that. I get that with diesel powered emergency pumps. These, when you spend Navy XP, are the most time efficient way to get funding for your miles. And then I like them because reduced critical chance. Well, these or these. I like the reduced critical chance because it helps like convoy escorts that get attacked by strike force survive until they can retreat. Destroyers will often sink if they get hit by crit. And they'll need this because when I actually start building torpedo cruisers, I'm going to want probably these larger torpedo rays. Not level 1 torpedo rays. It's not enough armament, really. For quite a while, I'm also spamming when I say spamming, I mean spamming destroyers. I have not yet swapped to most of the production is going to be light cruisers eventually. Improved version of the Brooklyn class deal with destroyers, and torpedo cruisers deal with capital ships. And the Brooklyn class would do reasonably well against other light cruisers, although the improved version. Can't they repair in Panama? I only have one ship repairing here. It's a level 3 naval base, so I should be able to repair up to 3 ships. Light cruisers would be the most effective thing against my navy, but it doesn't usually build very good ones or a ton of them. Of course, the UK's got quite a number. Those are the ships that'll be the most problematic. Enough HP to be a little bit of trouble for my light cruisers. Yeah, still fast enough to dodge torpedoes from the torpedo cruisers. But whatever, you deal with light cruisers with mostly light attack. And modern light cruisers, can usually pierce the armor. Sometimes heavy cruisers might be appealing, but the one naval treaty prevents me from building more, so just have to beat them with ships of the same class. If heavy cruisers might be a more cost-effective way to chew up light cruisers, because you can get the necessary piercing levels easier. Of course, those target with their heavy attack capital ships instead of light cruisers, unless the capital ships have all been sunk anyhow. So, eh. Alright, Bradley will probably. Maybe I should promote Clark first. Well, it's not yet winter. Supply, deep winter, the supply isn't terrible. I don't have so many divisions out. Yeah. These areas always have decent supply. It's not gonna have enough divisions there to test supply for a long time, actually. Yeah. When you promote someone for 100 days, they lose +1 on all traits. That affects logistics, which will marginally affect supply. Yeah. Of course, the current rates takes 100 days to get 6 command power. Yeah, I may only be able to promote one person. Shoot, yeah, it's got to be Bradley. He's a brilliant strategist. He can take aggressive assault if he's a field marshal, which increases chance of rolling assault and shock. By the way, that's clear proof you're meant to have field marshals in charge of armies, not army groups at times, because that trait does not affect tactics anyway when it's assigned to a field marshal. Only to an army group leader, only when they're in charge of an army. And I've tested this many times. Field marshals assigned to armies don't gain experience at half rate. People get these inaccurate ideas because they're thinking field marshals assigned to army groups, sometimes with no generals under them, sometimes with gain experience at half rate. They're confusing field marshal, the position, with field marshal, the promotion, but still in charge, acting as a general. Different things. Or endlessly people who insist it's the opposite, and I've done many, many playtests to myself to prove it. I didn't bother, since it was like way back on Reddit. It was hard to what if I had to get a URL to some website. It's there, short images to get screenshots of those idiots to prove to them that they're wrong, and then there's all the work of uploading it. Just enough to say I did play tests, and if they don't believe me, it's up on them. They can do their own darn tests. Fact is yes. Anybody in charge of army, it doesn't matter if they're field marshal or not, gains experience at a rate based on the number of divisions in combat. I think maybe the number of battalions in those divisions, and a little bit the amount of casualties dealt, but not in any way affected by whether a field marshal or not. I've done things where I saved, had a general in charge, saw how much experience he got in battles, rolled back, put a field marshal, swapped him into the same division, same exact combat, got the same number of experience points. Like you can see points when you click on this towards these things and towards skill. So field marshals do gain experience at the exact same rate when they're in charge of armies as opposed to army groups. And they can have an additional trait. In certain traits, they're field marshal only. I have seen sometimes, like my multiplayer game, if you complete this a little bit before election, you don't get the Civil Legion protests immediately. Instead, they occur a week before the election, give or take, or right after it. But they're set on the election rather than set on when you complete this focus. But if it's right after election, they occur immediately. So the way it's relevant is if you wait till 38 midterms to just before them to run this instead of doing it right away, which is what I did in my multiplayer game. Probably not optimal play. It's usually better just do them right in 36, the unit representation, but it does mean earlier civil war and less time to prepare, for what it's worth. Do you like this song? What I actually do is greatly scale up these soon by a little more chromium than the Soviets. Belgium is going communist. That's interesting. Poland is probably going communist. And Italy is not going to remain fascist. Of course, Japan took its shogunate. They never do show a restoration. Pretty much ever. Civilian factory construction speed can be useful if greatly delaying war. Well, honestly, the war support modern shogunate probably better these days with no, they have 80% base. I take that back. They don't need the war support. The research speed and the civilian factory construction speed is worth it. Japan starts heavily militarized, so they can't really build many more mill before they run out of factories and civ entirely due to consumer goods. So they actually probably want to run civ some, since they'll need to build infrastructure in China. So Showa restoration can be good for that. And research is very important. Very, very important. So it's enough with that research speed. They can definitely take supremacy of will instead of supremacy of technology, which, yeah, of course it always does, but the supremacy of technology, that is a nice sort of bonuses to division is much better than maybe getting armor and artillery a little faster. 5% to all research speed is better than this in terms of research speed. So all these are some nice one-time buffs. Yeah. Skilled player can of course overrun China easily enough. Show restoration, be able to then snowball their industry for a long time. Build lots of civ and build lots, and they'll actually utilize the manpower of China, have enough industry for it. Landslide is of course all about not going to war with allies, so once you beat the snot out of China, you can have a period of peace to build up before you mess with the Soviets. It's a strategy there. Eventually join the Axis under the non-aligned path. Which does mean I actually will eventually have to deal with Japan when you go to war with Axis. It's not that I'll never have war in the Pacific, it's just won't be until I actually go to war with Germany. So I can delay it. If I wish. I don't have to worry about being attacked, surprise attack, anything like that. It's probably the last time I want to put more rifles up. Definitely need them for my Civil War. Maybe that one taste the AI to buy more of these. Buy my stuff. Anyways. These are done. I'll save up for 1937 Institute Tech. Be close enough to 37 that if I save up 30 days progress, not going to have much ahead of time penalty. Radio will go into the 37 tech as well. Won't even have to suffer ahead of time penalty at all. Get the industry techs, and then probably have to think about infantry and artillery stuff. Right. Main things be army experience, be roof of command here. Grand battle plan focuses up through the second, so I get command power income. Theater training for both train XP and new junior officers getting promoted might become brilliant strategists or flexible strategists. And eventually this, yeah, well, relief of command, let me say, probably won't miss a quick improvisation because I want army XP. More in command power if I'm focusing my army instead of my navy. Well, I mean, even though they're one, I'll be a mix of army and navy. It won't be purely navy, but there's going to be less of an emphasis on it here. Probably because I'm flipping ideology quicker also. So, having not messed up the whole thing with with doing union representation at 36 elections. Earlier ideology, well, earlier Civil War, I should say, and then because earlier communist advisor, probably a little bit earlier ideology flip too. The point being, and earlier limited interventionism for sure, which may can try and get volunteers to Europe sooner. Right. I'm very lucky. I'll see like a large faction go to war with Germans and get an event that allowed me to send anti-fascist brigades, and so be able to send like potentially 50 divisions to Europe as volunteers. I'm not kidding, that's possible. It's entirely doable if enough nations are at war with the Nazis, because that event gives a minimum volunteer count of like +3. So every nation can receive at least 4 volunteers, and often much more. Okay. So the fascist collaborator path 1. We shut the Italians, all that. Ethiopia non-fascist path tag disappears. Because the Ep5 Italy has whatever civil war it's going to have, there's no chance of, if the Ethiopian war drags out till the Italian civil war, you can see the other side work with Ethiopia in an actually independent Ethiopia form. Not going to happen here. Free Ethiopia did not last long enough. Of course, that usually happens when there isn't a civil war in Ethiopia in the middle of the war with Italy. Doesn't hurt to have more than the minimum 20% training, so there's a little less exercises to reach regular. Of course, less time just doing exercises, period, means less equipment, less attrition. Still. Okay, time to promote Omar Badley to Field Marshal. Might be the only person, I'm pretty sure he will be, can be promoted before my Civil War, because I gained command power so darn slowly. Well, this did add to world tension. I'm getting a little more command power now. Not even enough that's noticeable. It's like went from 0.062 to 0.064 or something. Very little. I didn't even need to run as many lobbying efforts as I did, considering I do one of these, but support loss would happen after this would be done. If I had done that earlier to have a buffer in case I got an event that gave me 25 representatives, so the buffer was smaller, but I could have used it on an event that could have lost me 4 and needed to run a lobbying effort again. The RNG worked to my favor this time instead of against me like it did in my other game. Both my other US games, actually. It's the first time RNG has helped me in Congress instead of hurt me heavily or very heavily like the other two games. I really got screwed in the other multiplayer game I have ongoing, and less screwed but still hurt in the very first one is US. That was more human error than bad RNG. I think it was slightly below average RNG. They're somewhat bad, but it was really bad. Another one I'm doing with Joe. Yep. Letting the 36 elections happen without having done New Representation Act and suffered a massive defeat in 36 elections, which in Congress, which just really heavily harmed me. I had to panic and do special measures and some other stuff in order to get Fair Labor Standards Act in a reasonable time. The elections of 36. Democrats, 4 more years. Could do this. Get a bunch of political power and a MIO. Many people like that, although it will reduce my ideology drift even further. But stability in infrastructure construction speed means a lot more industry to play with. Prefer that to political power. Political power is tight, but not that tight. Gained 107 seats in the House. Ooh, nice. That's so much that this, which would set it to a set point of 307, I think, and 67, it won't even be relevant. I could have just not done Union Representation Act if I wasn't trying to just get the Civil War started early, and might not have been if I'd rolled the dice and not run it, I would have actually come out ahead. Probably. Could have delayed it, maybe a focus or two, grab something else useful like the Tuition Navy Act, but it's very risky. This is the safer path, generally, on average, much more succeed, but I got a massive victory in the elections. So, awesome. Really awesome. Definitely saving that in case of, like, game crashes or such. I hate it when I have a game crash after something really good happened, then it doesn't happen later. It's like, I don't know, I feel cheated. I know that you can just swap a crash up something bad and get good, but, you know, it's all about humans. Our feelings aren't always rational. You know? And, Dominions break with the crown. That can only mean that the UK has already run one of their things to go non-aligned or fascist. King's flagrant disregard for the pains and wishes of the Dominion. Okay, they're going non-aligned path. King's intent to marry Wallace Simpson has now resulted in the formation of a new Commonwealth of Nations with the various dominions. It seems the present prowess of the British government will preclude any action being taken in response to this move. Yeah. So, allies disband, Commonwealth of Nations forms. I think that happens if they go non-aligned or fascist. If you go communist as the UK, you can flip via referendum and actually keep the allies together. Nations may choose to leave, but not always. Like in the multiplier 1, Canada was going communist. I don't remember if they actually left, but they'll end up rejoining the allies if they did leave. Here, it's just Commonwealth nations with Canada and Australia. takes the UK a while to put together a faction again, if they ever do at all. They do this, they join the Axis. And attack Italy. Be interesting to see, since this should lead Canada to do patriation, but they go permit joint defense, but this is the all Democrat path, or they go fascist or communist. Pretty much forces them to do all the demands actually to do an alternate history path. How the ground-based train would have a higher air access chance, I don't know. People are on the ground, not taking off or anything. I would assume that the fighters shouldn't be destroyed by air accidents. Unless people are sabotaging on the ground. And yes, sabotage did historically occur of aircraft and other stuff. That's not just Stalin's paranoia. Heck, U.S. companies that were doing investments in the Soviet Union, because there was actually a lot of U.S. investment and trade with the Soviet Union at this point. It wasn't until after World War II where the whole Cold War essentially embargo on trade happened. The UK refused to trade with the Soviets early, but the U.S. actually did. Have a thaw after like 36. They started trading with the Soviets pretty heavily. Or maybe 35, 34. Actually, right around the time that, what was that fascist basher in the media, father of yellow journalism, who was a Nazi sympathizer, Hearst. Randolph Hearst. Right around the time that Hearst was giving Mussolini columns and spreading literal Nazi propaganda about the Holodomor that made it sound 100 times worse than it was. Like exaggerating the death tolls and claiming people were just going through the streets shooting people and all sorts of like stuff that was exaggerations. And the U.S. started trading with the Soviet Union. I'm sure Hertz had hoped that we won, but the U.S. did, and you saw like Ford helping build factories there and stuff. Anyway, Ford Motor Company, which is ironic because Henry Ford was also a Nazi sympathizer. Of course, he also built factories in Nazi Germany. He built them anywhere there was money to be made. But U.S. industrialists commented in some mining companies that were involved in the Soviet Union commented on how they personally witnessed clear evidence that things have been sabotaged, like expensive mining equipment. So there were Trotskyites or fascists, because there were fascists in the Soviet Union. They existed. They were just underground, sabotaging equipment. This is part of what fed into Stalin's paranoia. He was paranoid, but there were really things. This gets into, it's not really paranoia when everyone actually is out to get you. Of course, everyone wasn't. It was a tiny segment of his population, and the guy let some people being out to get him and some people out to destroy the Soviet Union, feed a paranoia that everyone almost, you know, uh, and it can be isolating at the top. So it's easier to think that kind of thing when you're alone. You don't have many friends around you. This is why it's good for a long time. U.S. presidents used to have a lot of friends around them. Play basketball with Secret Service agents or God knows what. And that would keep them from becoming so paranoid and isolated, though. Like, Trump's very isolated and becoming very paranoid. Even if the U.S. is a giant, vicious empire, which is the truth of it, really is, has been since, well, the 1920s when Wars Iraq. It was written by Smiley Butler, the guy who ended up exposing the plot to try and do a coup against FDR before he even took office in 1932, after the elections, but before FDR took office in 1933. The business plot, some of the largest bankers and other organizations in the United States, industrialists like the guy, the family is in charge, that owns what became Firestone Tires, for instance. So those kind of people, big industrialists, they tried to organize a coup against FDR using discontent among what was known as the Veterans Bonus Army or whatnot. The basically they tried to work with the VFW and stuff to find veterans who are pissed off the U.S. government had not honored pensions that were promised from World War I or not adequately honored them, and get these pissed off veterans to march on D.C. and overthrow the government by military force. They were going to, they made contracts to try and buy rifles. They were going to arm the veterans. Not that some of them didn't already own guns, but they were going to make sure they were well armed, and literally march 10,000 men, which is like a division, it's iron terms, so it's not much, but the element of surprise would have been their side. Take D.C. and declare a new government. That's a fascist coup I've ever heard of one. But it was thankfully exposed by Smiley Butler, who was the most decorated Marine Corps general, or most decorated Marine, and he was a general in the Marine Corps ever. Still is, I believe, the most decorated Marine ever, and it served in all these imperialist wars in South America in the 1920s, and come to the conclusion that the U.S. was an empire and it sucked, and actually wrote a book about it and become a very popular media figure. Yeah, somehow these industrialists didn't realize he hated the guts of people like them, or they thought it was all a lie and a show, and he was saying one thing and believed another, more likely. But he was the only, or maybe he was just the only man who was popular enough to organize the veterans, and they thought if they could win them over with money, greed. But nope, he pretended to be on their side, pretended to go along with them, collected names, facts, dates, and then turned into the U.S. Congress. And then the newspapers, which are large, most of which were owned by Hearst, who was a Nazi sympathizer and sympathetic with the business plot, and some of the banks heavily indebted to or owned by some of the banks that had been involved in the business plot, the banking families. So people who tried to do this coup owned many of the newspapers, and so they went out and published all these editorials claiming it was never serious. It was just a casual idea of discussing cocktail lounges. Nonsense. But they got away with it. None of them ever went to jail or anything. That's probably why people thought they could get away with January 6th, because the last time that there had been an attempt to march in the Capitol and do a coup, the business plot, really didn't get as far as January 6th. There was no actual march in the Capitol. The people who organized it got away scot-free. course, a lot of people did go to jail for January 6th. Not enough. If you want to see proper crackdowns in Brazil when there was an attempt to do a fascist coup, put Bolsonaro back in power, 2,000 people were arrested. That's a real crackdown. But anyways, of course, that was partway. It wasn't just the capital. There were attempts to take over government buildings in like every state in Brazil. So 2,000 people wasn't just all around the capital of the country. It was, 100 here, 100 there. It was a much more organized attempt at a coup than January 6th was. Of course, the business plot was also much more organized than January 6th. Probably would have worked if it hadn't been caught, turned in. No, actually, maybe after radio, I'll do interwar artillery so that I can make light self-propel artillery and swap this wave of command. Make a close support gun, light tank, which is probably what I want to use for light tanks, and then just create a light self-propelled artillery variant, which doesn't even cost me any armor XP to make. Then I can make divisions with light self-propelled. I think that might even unlock medium and heavy too. They're just pure, don't cost any XP to make and save them. Later I can add tanks to them, which will cost armor XP to have actual tank divisions with artillery support. Alright. So I did lose some support in the house via random event. Montana. It's an arms factory. You lose support if you say these kind of deals are below present, I believe. It's way up there. Doesn't even have any resources. It's not a decision anymore. This is outdated text. It gives you a mission. You have a period of time. If you don't do it, though, you lose support. Put this off and check, but I'm pretty sure. Probably test that. After I've saved, this is about time to end this video. So, it's perfect timing to test it. Cool, another division. Let's see, 7 is probably more than enough. It's getting converted eventually. 18 with. Oh, shoot. These guys. Here. Can only use about, if I attack from 2 directions, 7-5 with 4 divisions out of the 7. Presumably, I'd also want to attack here with 3 more, though. That's if there's defenders. So 7 is the right number. Yep. Of course, I put some here. Might be able to march in here and definitely can march there. Probably stick to these size divisions instead of the National Guard ones, because they have more attack per width. 78 for 18 instead of 97.8 for 24. Not drastically. But the advantage is more support artillery engineers. You can have 4 of these instead of 3 for a given amount of width. So, yeah. Confederate early troops tend to be very bad, so hopefully they want enough breakthrough to do crits. This one, or at least not unless they coordinate their attacks perfectly all in one division. Using smaller divisions, I put less resources into this. If I was using larger of the same number or smaller, I can also break up and move more places once I break through defenses to quickly take strategic death. So. Alright, this is a good place to say to save. This video is long enough at 1 hour and 20 minutes. Viewers, I wish you all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. And may you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Until next time, adieu, and best wishes, best luck.